This is Sabrina and Jake's sheep brain dissection video. We will be identifying various structures within the brain and describing their function in the nervous system.
Before we began dissection, we identified the major surface regions of the brain.
This image depicts the cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex is the outermost covering of the brain. As shown in the image, the cerebral hemisphere is the beige-colored area of the brain. The cerebellum is located below the cerebral hemisphere, as indicated by the color red. It coordinates the timing for skeletal muscle activity, controlling balance and equilibrium. The brainstem is indicated by green. It regulates autonomic behaviors such as breathing, blood pressure, etc. The diencephalon, also known as the interbrain, is contained within the cerebral hemisphere and is indicated by the color purple.
This is the frontal lobe, this is the parietal lobe, this is the occipital lobe, and this is the temporal lobe.
The frontal lobe contains the primary motor area, which is responsible for controlling voluntary skeletal muscle movement. It largely dictates muscle that requires fine motor control, such as those in the face, mouth, and hands. This is our first area of interest because we wanted to learn how humans socialize and choose sexual partners. The frontal lobe is associated with social and sexual behaviors, as well as attention.
The occipital lobe is our second area of interest. We were fascinated by the phenomenon of color blindness, and we wanted to learn more about the physiology behind it. Through our research, we learned that the occipital lobe interprets visual stimulus and is associated with the interpretation of color and recognition of physical objects. The temporal lobe is our third area of interest. We wanted to learn more about memory formation. Through our research, we discovered that the hippocampus, which is a structure within the temporal lobe, is heavily associated with memory formation. However, it is important to note that memory formation is a very complex function of the brain and involves many more areas than just the hippocampus.
The gyri of the cerebrum is an elevated ridge of the cerebral cortex tissue.
Here, Sabrina is cutting along the longitudinal fissure, splitting the left and right hemispheres of the brain.
Sabrina's scalpel is indicating the location of the lateral ventricle. This is the spinal cord. This is the medulla oblongata. This is the pons. And this area is the midbrain.
Okay, areas that's going to look like this.
The midbrain makes up a small part of the brainstem. It is composed of canals called cerebral aqueducts, fibrous tracts called cerebral peduncles, and rounded nuclei called corpora quadrigemina that function as reflex centers with vision and hearing. The sulcus is a fissure in the surface of the brain surrounding the gyri, separating the different structures of the brain. It creates the physical, convoluted appearance of the brain.
Depicted in the image, the ventricles are the chambers formed by the enlargement of the central canal of neural tubes in the four regions of the brain. The ventricles are filled with cerebrospinal fluid, which absorbs physical shock received by the brain, protecting it from damage. The ventricles also help relay information between the third and lateral ventricles. Positioned below the lateral ventricle, the corpus callosum is a large fiber that connects the cerebral hemispheres and serves as a connection or joint, allowing communication between the two hemispheres within the cerebrum. Positioned below the fornix, the thalamus is located at the top of the brainstem and is above the hypothalamus. It largely serves as a conductor for sensory input. This area of the brain directs incoming signals of stimulation to the cerebral cortex. It also helps to regulate motor function. The hypothalamus is located below the thalamus and composes the base of the diencephalon, or the inner brain. It helps regulate the pituitary gland and various other vital functions, such as maintaining body temperature, water balance, and metabolism. The hypothalamus is part of the limbic system, or emotional visceral region of the brain, which helps to control various impulses and urges, such as hunger, thirst, and sexual desire. The pons is the rounded structure which protrudes just below the midbrain. Composed mostly of fiber tracts, its main function is to help regulate autonomic behaviors such as breathing. It also helps relay sensory input between the cerebellum and the cerebrum. Located below the pons, the medulla oblongata is part of the brainstem and helps to control and regulate autonomic functions such as digestion and heart rate. In addition, it helps to relay input and signals between the brain and spinal cord due to its position on the brainstem.
The olfactory bulbs are located in the frontal lobe. Its main function is to relay olfactory stimulus to other structures of the brain, largely controlling our sense of smell. The olfactory bulbs help to filter through the many smells we encounter, ensuring that we become aware of any unfamiliar, potent, and potentially dangerous smells around us.
This concludes our video identifying the structures of the brain. Thanks for watching.